Hello everyone and welcome into a very special edition of Mean Green Game Day. I'm your host Sarah Baskin, filling in for Michelle Brooks. Alongside me today are Jack Brown, Justin Ballou, and Connor Hibbett. Fellas, how are we doing?
Great. Pumped up for the conference tourney.
Despite the loss, still feeling great.
Pumped up for the conference tournament. Well, the CUSA tournament did kick off earlier today in Frisco with the women's preliminary round. We saw UAB and Old Dominion advance, and we will see them tomorrow. And currently, Max Fiedler and the Rice Owls are battling it out against Southern Miss in the men's tournament. We're going to be getting into the conference tournament. We'll have our brackets for the men's and the women's side. But before we get into all of that, fellas, we need to talk about what happened over the weekend with UNT against UAB. Jack, what went down?
So UAB made me eat my own words. I said UAB is a soft team, and then they come out there and they play the most physical defense I've ever seen in the Super Pit and just destroy UNT and lock them down offensively. UAB was just too physical. They played kind of UNT's defense. UNT plays physical, but UNT didn't get physical to the second half of the second game. And so I think it was too late for them to overcome, and UAB just was the better team this weekend.
I agree. I got to tell you, on that Friday game, watching it, it seemed like there was more than 5 UAB guys on the court at all times. It just seemed like they couldn't not cover us. They were all over us. Justin, what do you think happened on Saturday?
Well, I think Jack nailed it when he said that they were more physical, and it wasn't just that they were more physical; it's that they were swarming on defense against UNT in both games. It started with their press defense that UNT was not prepared for. They couldn't handle it in either game, and it really slowed down UNT's offense even slower than they like to go on offense. And then when they were able to beat the press, UAB did a nice job of keeping us off guard with man looks and then with zone looks on our defensive end. It really seemed like our offensive game plan was just let Javian Hamlet have the ball and everybody else clear out. And it didn't work against this physical UAB defense. It just seemed like a lot of UNT players were standing around the three-point line, not cutting to the basket, and that's our forte on offense. We have to get to the basket. There were 3 main points where I think that we lost this game. And the first was that we shot 32 three-pointers this weekend. That is not a recipe for success. And I know that it's due in large part to the fact that we got so far behind, but we are not a team that's going to shoot 16 three-pointers a game and be successful. The other thing is what Jack said. They were more physical than us, and they out-hustled us on the defensive end. In that Saturday game, it ended up being a close game, even though UNT was bad offensively. They out-rebounded us by 12. And in a game like that, in a close game, little plays like that can make a huge difference. And then the other point that I had was that UAB led for 79 out of 80 total minutes in these games.
Wow.
I talked about last week how UNT is not a team that's built to come from behind, and UAB is a team that is meant to play from in front with that physical style of play. So it kind of was the same situation as happened with Marshall the previous week, where we fell into their style of gameplay, and that's why we lost those games.
I totally agree. I was just about to say that it seems like the recipe to beat UNT is knock them out of their identity, knock them off course for the game, just like what happened with Marshall. Connor, talk to me about how we can gain our confidence back moving into the tournament.
How about getting more guys involved? It's that simple. It feels like right now, the whole entire team, just like what Justin said, it's like, oh, let Hamlet go and see what we can do. Maybe we can get an offensive rebound and get lucky, make a shot here or there. But it's amazing. Everyone was standing around against UAB, and that's not going to work against the better teams. And so as we move along in Conference USA tournament, we should win our first game against Middle Tennessee. But after that, we can't afford to be playing like one-dimensional. Everyone clear out, let Hamlet go 1-on-4. It's like it's not going to work. And so we have to get more guys involved if we think we're going to have any sort of chance to winning Conference USA, to win the Conference USA tournament. And that's the only way we're going to get into the big dance.
I completely agree, and listen, it was a really tough series. It was especially a tough series for those seniors to lose their last games in the Super Pit. We assume, unless they get into the NIT, we will see. But I want to take a zoom back and look at the season as a whole. Jack, talk to me about what you liked about this season, how we were successful.
Yeah, so the real turning point for me is we swept Rice. We took 1 out of 2 against La Tech at home, and then we beat Southern Miss. I thought we were really on an uptrend going upwards, and I was thinking that we had a really good shot in making a run in the tournament. And then the UAB it knocked all the confidence I had in UNT just to the ground.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I agree with him. I think that second La Tech game where they were able to get the split was really the best win of the season for UNT, because it was a game where Hamlet was struggling on offense, but other guys were able to step up and perform in that game and score a lot of points. So that's something that I love to see from this team, because when Hamlet's struggling, a lot of times there's guys that can't make shots, and that was a game where they did, and they went on a 4-game win streak after that game, starting with that game, so they were playing their best ball of the season, I think, during that stretch that Jack mentioned, and specifically that game.
Listen, I do actually want to give Jack a little bit of credit. His player to watch over the weekend was Thomas Bell, and I think we can all agree that Thomas Bell was a bright spot over the weekend. I'm just hoping that guys like that can carry that on into the conference tournament. Connor, what are your best moments of the season?
I'm not to agree with Justin. That win against Louisiana Tech seemed to kind of solidify everything else. It kind of seemed to be the perfect UNT 2021 kind of victory. It was a kind of ugly victory where neither team seemed to be playing great, but it was a low-scoring game, and UNT found a way to win. I would have liked to see us win both games against Louisiana Tech, obviously, and of course, I would have liked to see us not get swept at home with senior night in the latter night of the two. But things sometimes happen in the ways you don't expect them to. In fact, Jack thought we were going to be able to sweep UAB. So sometimes the unexpected happens. FPI only gave UAB about a 32% chance of winning either game, much less sweeping. And I can say this, the low point for me, another low point, was our non-conference game against Mississippi State. Coming into the season, Mississippi State had lost their 4 best players from last year's team. Unfortunately, we still could not beat them. Even it was on the road, but I thought we could get that victory with what we returned with what Mississippi State lost. Because that would have been a really good schedule booster and BPI booster to get us into the tournament. But unfortunately, we couldn't win that game. But I agree with Justin on the high point of the season, and hopefully we can kind of just look at this loss as a way to build rather than go down, because we still have a lot of opportunity in front of us.
And listen, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of basketball still left to be played. And there's a lot on the line for these seniors. We're losing 6 seniors, including who I believe to be our big 3, Javian Hamlet, Zachary Simmons, and James Reese. Justin, I want you to talk to me about the impact that these guys have had on this team.
Well, I think, first of all, these seniors have gone a long way to changing the culture of this team. Last year, we saw them win conference in the regular season for the first time since 2010. And you have guys like Javian Hamlet, who in the past 2 seasons really brought national recognition to this team, especially last year in the year where he won Male Athlete of the Year in Conference USA. But he brought national recognition. And then you had guys like Thomas Bell, who last season wasn't great offensively, but was great defensively. This season, he took his game up a notch on offense, and he was really that X factor that we talked about a lot all season, and then he was still great defensively. And then you had James Reese, who was always the shooter type. He had the highlight reel shooting plays, and then you had a guy like Zach Simmons, who was probably one of UNT's best big man of all time, offensively at least, down low in the post. So it stinks that they're going to be losing 4 starters most likely, but I think maybe the only way that we'll see some of these guys back is if they don't go far in the conference tournament and they feel like they have unfinished business maybe for next season. But I think if they win conference and they reach March Madness, that would be the seniors' final accomplishment as a Mean Green.
I couldn't agree more, and I think you bring up an excellent point. It is worth noting that because this was obviously a COVID year, the NCAA has extended eligibility. So this year in eligibility doesn't necessarily count. So we could see seniors back. And Jack, I want to speculate on that. Among those seniors, who could you see coming back? Who could you see moving on?
And I'm just gonna put it in my own opinion. It's like if I were a senior, I would no thanks. I mean, I played my 4 years and I'm done. So I don't expect any of them to be back unless they really, 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 really think that they can come back and win the conference. So.
How do you think we rebuild from here?
It's just the incoming freshmen and then the young players we have. One freshman I'm super excited about, reminds me of DJ Draper, is Matthew Stone. He went to high school with Bajan Cortez. During COVID, when you're not supposed to go out, I snuck up to Oklahoma to the secret basketball league called the Skins League, and Bajan Cortez, and there was Trey Young there, Buddy Hield, and Matthew Stone were playing, and Matthew Stone was crazy. He could shoot lights out. So Bajan's going to Oklahoma, and Matthew Stone chose UNT over Oklahoma. So people like that, McCaslin is a good recruiter. So someone like Matthew Stone next year that's going to get a chance when these seniors leave is going to be fun to watch.
Listen, I think we mostly agree. We agree on a lot of stuff about UNT, but I think the thing that I think unanimously among this group that we agree on is how great of an asset to this university Grant McCaslin is, how great of a coach he is to this team. He's a leader of men. Connor, talk to me about him and how he's going to help mold these new guys, and who are these newer guys that you're looking at?
Well, I think one of the biggest things to look at moving forward, like you mentioned, Sarah, the super seniors. I don't want to call them the COVID seniors because I don't want to put the COVID category on anything, but the super seniors, and you're going to see this in football, and I'm obviously going to get to that in several months. But with basketball, you're going to see a lot of these super seniors, so to speak, come back next year. Now, like Jack said, I don't know how many of those seniors for UNT are going to do that, but if they feel like they have unfinished business, like Justin said, they perhaps might all come back together and maybe try to form a collective group, because Western Kentucky is going to be losing a couple of guys as well as a couple of other teams. But something else in terms of our coach, what he might do. He might look towards the transfer portal. Now, we have some up-and-coming young guys that I'm really looking forward to seeing play next year. But I think the transfer portal is a really big thing to look for a lot of teams in college basketball and college football for these next several years.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw it to Justin because I know he likes a certain big man that is going to be the future of UNT.
Yeah, Abu Usmani is that guy, and I really think this year he's taken his game, or he's really filled the void that Simmons left on defense this season. Simmons was, in my opinion, he had a down season on defense, and Usmani is a different body type. He's more of a lineman type that Zach Simmons is, so he was able to get physical with a lot of those big guys in Conference USA. And then we have another guy that I'm super excited about, Reuben Jones. He's probably going to be the starting point guard next year. He had some moments this season where he really shined, and he kept the team around in some games where he was in the game, late in the game. So I'm super excited to see him. And then the recruiting class, like Jack mentioned, coming into this year. McCaslin has done such a great job, and he's such an interesting coach to me because while he's a player's coach, he's also a coach that's going to go find guys that fit his scheme and recruit guys that fit his scheme. So it's a really interesting balance that he has, and he's found a way to make it work.
Totally agree. Recruiting is a full-time job, and Grant McCaslin has definitely done really well at. But when we come back, we're going to get into the UNT women's season. How did they play against Rice, and what do we see from them moving forward? Coming up next. Welcome back into Mean Green Game Day. Again, I am your host, Sarah, alongside Jack, Justin, and Connor. UNT women's basketball has had an incredible season. It's been really a joy to watch, but this last weekend, they had a split series against Rice. Connor, before we get into their full season recap, I want you to talk to me about that Rice series. What made it a split? What did they do better on Saturday?
Well, I want to give UNT all the credit. They deserve the credit. They took care of business. But something else that we were talking about last week was Rice going to be really mentally and physically prepared for that second game, knowing that they didn't really need to win it. They were going to rest their players in order to be more prepared for the Conference USA tournament. But I like what I've seen with the women's team so far this year. It's been such an improvement from last year. Here's my favorite part. I always like looking for the future. I always try to pinpoint a breakthrough season and say, okay, but what does the future look like? And the future looks really bright for the women's basketball team. 8 of the 16 players on the roster are underclassmen, and most of those underclassmen are the key contributors to the team. So I'm really looking forward for the future of UNT basketball, both men's and women's.
I totally agree. I think that the difference between the men's and the women's is that we have a lot of guys going out on the men's team, but the women's team is really kind of just getting started. Jack, talk to me about what you were expecting out of the season and what you saw.
Yeah, so I definitely expected none of this to happen. I mean, after you go 12-19 and you have a quick turnaround and you're above 500, I didn't expect it. I heard rumors of Jaylee Mitchell lost the locker room. You know, she's on her third set of assistant coaches. I just really had no faith in the UNT women's basketball team. And the first game day I definitely had no faith. But now I'm starting to have a growing consistency of like faith and I'm respect towards the women team. So I think they've definitely blown me away, and they've improved a lot.
Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the one thing coming into the season was, I think with the women was the whole COVID situation, because last year, like Jack mentioned, they had a down season. So with this new off season and all the COVID guidelines, and on top of that having some new players come in, I think Jaylee Mitchell did a really nice job improving this team from this season to last. And then going back to the Sunday game real fast, I think the biggest thing that they did in that game was they were able to limit Nancy Mulkey. Now, Connor was right about the effort and the potential minute limitations that some of the Rice players were on, but they were able to limit Nancy Mulkey to only 12 points and 3 rebounds. On Friday night, she had 10 rebounds, and a lot of those rebounds were big time, and they made plays for Rice down the stretch of that game. But credit Emma Villas-Gomez, or EVG from the Mean Green, because she played 30 minutes. She got really physical with Nancy Mulkey. She had 15 points on the offensive end. So it's a name that we didn't really hear this season for the Mean Green, but credit Jaylee Mitchell again, because she was able to find a matchup that favored UNT, and EVG did a nice job.
I totally agree. And listen, Mulkey's no joke. I think that you two fellas were at that first game, and she's no joke. She's tough to play against. She's extremely tall, as we know, and I definitely was proud of our girls in that second game and how they handled that. But you mentioned some breakout stars. Connor, talk to me about some girls that came out this year and really surprised you, and talk about some breakout stars.
Quincy Noble is first for me. I think she's the future of this UNT basketball team. I think she kind of, the team feeds around her. I think in terms of energy, I think the team will feed off of her. And again, like I said, we got a young team. And we got, again, most of the key contributors back for the future. So the team is going to be able to have that, so to speak, well-oiled machine. And I love that, because that creates a good base for a foundation of a program to build upon for the future. And we've seen this in the past with basketball, football. You see this all the time. As a team will break through for 1 year like UNT has this year, but it'll kind of set stone for at least the foreseeable future. And I think it starts with her.
Yeah, and sorry, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
I think Jaylee Mitchell has really put herself in a great spot for the future. When your top 2 leading scorers, Nia Boyd and Quincy Noble, are sophomores, you're putting yourself in a great spot to recruit and focus what you want to teach on for the future. And I think she's in a super good spot to have success for the next 2 years.
Talk to me a little bit more about Nia Boyd and what you liked from her this season.
Yeah, Nia Boyd, obviously, just her three-point shot, it was just amazing. I didn't expect anybody to score with Anisha George leaving our leading scorer last year from the center's position. But when you have Quincy Noble and Nia Boyd, they it's not just Nia Boyd, it's Quincy Noble too. They feed off of each other. You got to have one or the other to go off. So. And
Nia Boyd really improved her offensive game from last season. She upped her stats from 9 points a game to over 12.
Wow.
So an impressive stat there. And then obviously Quincy Noble, and she did all of this in her first season with the Mean Green. I know she's a sophomore, but this was her first season, and she stole the show. And you have this duo now for the next few years that the Jaylee Mitchell is going to get to kind of play around with, and now you just have to find a better supporting cast, in my opinion, and a more consistent supporting cast to go with those 2 girls.
The other girl that I really liked this season was Jazzy and Jackson, especially in these last several games. Connor, talk to me about her a little.
Impressed by her. I think she's one of the more dominant players in Conference USA, and I really am impressed with her skill set. I think she brings a lot to the table. I think she's a dangerous player and one to watch for the future.
What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I agree with him, but also I want to throw someone out there that's kind of underrated that doesn't get enough attention.
Let's hear it.
is Madison Townley.
Of course,
and,
yeah.
and I know Michelle would like me saying that. It's just she does all the dirty work and gets the rebounds. And so her being a senior, we're going to miss her next year, and we're going to have to find a big man. Maybe EVG can fill in and get some rebounds for us.
I was going to say Madison Townley as well, because her ability to draw charges is something that you don't see very often with players, that they're just able to do that. But she is able to do that on defense, and she is a force to be reckoned with because of that.
So, Jack, talk to me about moving forward to next season. What are going to be the holes in this team? You mentioned Madison Townley. What are the holes? What do we need to improve? Obviously, Quincy Noble came out and played fantastic for us this year. We were all really impressed. But she did kind of have a downside in these last several games. Talk to me about that a little.
Yeah, so, if you double Noble, then Boyd's going to have the scoring night. If you double Boyd, then Noble's going to have a scoring night, and then Jazzion Jackson steps in. But it's just 2 years in a row now. Anisha George, our leading scorer, rebounder, she's in Switzerland now playing whatever basketball, and then we lose Madison Townley, our rebounder now. So we're gonna have a hole with rebounding. We're gonna need a big man and a big woman. And with Mulkey being a sophomore too, we're gonna have to compete against Rice. So we're gonna need a big man.
What do you see moving forward as the holes in our team? Justin, you agree?
Yeah, I agree that it's that big man. I think you're set at guard, obviously, with Boyd and Noble, and then Jazzion Jackson as well. If you watch a lot of the UNT games from this season, their biggest weakness is at the rim, and in rim protection and at rim offense. So people like EVG next year, Rochelle Lee, they're going to have to step up to fill that role of Madison Townley being gone. And like Jack said, there's a lot of big centers and good centers in this conference, like Nancy Mulkey, that they're going to have to get physical with. I think that's the glaring need on this team right now. You have inconsistent performances sometimes from outside of Quincy Noble and Nia Boyd, but those two will figure it out. They'll catch fire next season. Your weakness is going to be at the rim.
I agree. And listen, we're splitting hairs here because I think we can all agree that we're really proud of this women's team. They performed better than expected. We're really, excited to watch them moving forward. Jack, what was the high point of this season for you?
Obviously, it was just going kind of undefeated on that big win streak. It just, when you see that happen from UNT women's, like I said, I didn't expect it, and I'm sure as heck no one expected it. So I think the big win streak, and obviously cooling off, but the big win streak's huge, and then beating Rice is huge. That just kind of proves, I know it was just the last game of the season, but it proves Nancy Mulkey you can limit her and you could out-rebound her.
I totally agree. Listen, I really enjoyed watching that Rice game, that last Rice game. Obviously, it didn't mean as much to Rice as it did to us, but I still think that we came out and showed our heart and our passion as a team. I think that says a lot, momentum moving into a tournament. But when we come back, we're going to be picking some of our CUSA MVPs. We all picked a different guy, so see who we picked coming up next. Welcome back into Mean Green Game Day. Again, I'm your host, Sarah, alongside Jack, Justin, and Connor. Listen, this was a really exciting year in Conference USA. I don't know that any of us were expecting it to have so many good moments and so many great players, especially in a COVID year, but a lot of guys really stood out and kind of rose above the pack. Justin, talk to me about who your MVP is in the conference.
Well, I think, first of all, if we're giving this award based on the player that was most valuable to his team and then impacted games for his team the most, it's got to be Javon Jackson from UTSA. First of all, his numbers speak for himself. He's got 20.7 points a game leading Conference USA. He's 38% from downtown three-point range, which is really impressive, and then 48% total on field goals. So obviously, he's hit great numbers there. And everything that UTSA has done this season has been really dependent on Javon Jackson. He's the reason that they're potentially a sleeper in the conference tournament. I wouldn't go quite that far yet, but just his shooting ability and the way that he's able to put UTSA on his back on a nightly basis is really incredible. I talked about kind of how their success is dependent on him. In games where he scores under 10 points, UTSA almost always loses. If he goes over 20, UTSA almost always wins. So they don't have a terrific supporting cast around him, which is why I wouldn't say that they're quite a sleeper pick yet. But when you've got a guy that can shoot the ball like him, he's got to be the MVP.
I really like that pick a lot. Obviously, leading scorer, and I like that you picked him because he really is, it's the true definition of valuable. It's the most valuable player on that team. He really does elevate that team past. Jack, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I like Javon Jackson. Puerto Rico, JJ Barea. I think he averaged 26 points last year, and then it's 20 this year. A little step down, but it's still crazy. So I think overall, he carries UTSA.
Solid pick, Justin, solid pick. So you picked a senior who has a really big impact on the team. Connor went a different way. Connor, tell me your MVP.
Well, in a way, I don't like to admit this. This guy is a true freshman for Louisiana Tech, Kenneth Lofton Jr. Here's what I don't want to admit. He's a true freshman. He's 2.5 years younger than me. He's 6'7", 275 pounds. I'm almost 21 years old. I'm 5'7", 155 pounds. A little jealous. But here's what I'm not jealous about, and one thing that I'm honored to say about this guy. He's an incredible basketball player, and he's not just a big Hulk out there dunking. He averages 11.5 points per game, just over 7 rebounds, and he's highly efficient from the field, shooting at about a 57% mark. And this guy, as well with the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, they're a young team. And this is a team that's really been on a hot streak since about mid-January. So he and the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs are really a team to watch out for, but I really have a lot of respect for Kenneth Lofton Jr.
I definitely think they're a team to look out for. Obviously, they're a huge threat in the tournament, and we'll get into our brackets coming up later on in the show. But MVP as a true freshman, I don't know if I can go fully to an MVP level. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but Kenneth Lofton was incredible this season, and we saw firsthand what he was able to do against UNT. We weren't physical enough with him, which was a problem in a lot of our games. But I like that pick. He's a freshman, so he's going to be a guy that UNT has to see for a lot of years to come. He's so physical in the paint, and as Connor said, he is a huge dude. He's a bulldog on that Bulldogs team.
He is the bulldog.
It personifies his team. Jack, do you like that pick?
Yeah, I love it. Like the first game day, I said he is the bulldog. He's huge, and he's only a freshman, so I mean, Zach Simmons gone. You got to pray and hope Usmani can guard Lofton.
Listen, bold pick from Connor, but it sounds like we all really like it. So Jack and I were going back and forth on our picks because there are two guys that have really risen above in this conference, but ultimately I ended up going with Charles Bassey from Western Kentucky. This guy is a beast. First of all, his physical presence is just outstanding. I'm sad that they didn't get to come and play here, so we couldn't see that in person. This guy is in top 5 or leading in almost every statistical category in the conference. First in blocks, first in top 5 in field goal percentage. This guy averages a double-double. He's humongous. He definitely leads that team. He, leads them past where they need to be. He's my guy. What do you guys think?
He's probably the most NBA-ready player, I would say, in Conference USA. Would y'all agree with that?
Yeah, in Conference USA, yeah.
He does some stuff nationally ranked. So, I mean, like, his stats are some of the most nationally ranked stuff. So, it's like, it's crazy for him to be an NBA-ready product in the CUSA.
Now, Justin, I know you're a big Western Kentucky guy in this context. Tell me about the impact that you think he has on the team.
Well, I think the biggest impact he makes is on the defensive end. You mentioned his blocks, and it's not just that. He's probably got like a 10-foot wingspan. I mean, he's a monster of a human being. He just causes havoc for opposing offense when they get towards the rim, and then not even to mention his offensive stats as well with the 18 a game. So yeah, he's a force to be reckoned with. And as a UNT fan, I would be scared if we have to go against this dude, because I don't think we have a big enough dude and a physical enough guy on the inside that can match up against him. He would be my second pick for MVP of the conference.
Okay, second pick, not bad. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's one of the best players, obviously, in Conference USA. He is just a freak of nature in a positive way. He's an incredible player. And I went to the Western Kentucky game last year before COVID hit, before the world turned upside down. He was just an incredible player. I was right next to the court, and I was watching him. He's just I wouldn't want to go against him. He's just an absolute force out there, a force to be reckoned with. And I think he's going to do really good at the next level as well.
So big force on the court on both ends. Really, so congratulations to me on a great pick. But Jack, who was the other guy we were talking about?
Yeah, so it's Tavion Kinsey, and I think whoever's going to win MVP in this USA, it's going to be because their team wins the conference tournament. And so I think Tavion Kinsey, and that's a sneak peek for my bracket. I think Marshall's going to go all the way. You call me crazy, but upset city. I think Tavion Kinsey, he scores 20 points per game. He's the Bradley Beal of the CUSA. He leads the team in rebounds, which is very concerning, but it's very cool that he's a guard and leads the team in rebounds. He has an amazing backcourt partner with Jared West that leads the league in assists and feeds him the ball. I think going all the way in the tournament, it's going to solidify him to be the MVP.
Justin, tell me what you saw from him when they came here to UNT.
Well, UNT, he wasn't actually a guy that you heard his name called a lot against UNT, so credit the UNT defense for that. And the only reason I would say that he's maybe lower on my MVP list is because he has a guy like Andrew Thomas on that team that takes away a lot of his points, because he's getting points of his own, he's taking his own shots. So just because of the duo situation there and the fact that they can both score the ball is why I would give it to somebody like a Javon Jackson, who's like a one-man team. Same kind of thing with Charles Bassey a lot of the time. It just with the duo pairing and that they can both score the ball, that's why I probably wouldn't say it's Tavion Kinsey.
I mean, I hear what you're saying about the duo pairing, but his scoring really speaks for itself. He's still like almost leading the conference in scoring. He was leading the conference in scoring for a couple weeks there, and then Javon Jackson overtook him. Connor, talk to me a little bit about Tavion Kinsey. Do you like the pick?
I do like that pick. Of course, I'm going to respect mine as well, but I'm going to respect Jack's. But yeah, as a guard, he can rebound. That's rare. And in a society, in a world of college basketball where the fundamentals of the game are kind of going out the window, it's kind of refreshing to see a guy play fundamentally smart, and he's definitely one of those.
All right, I'm going to throw you guys a curveball right here. Jack, if you had to pick an MVP for next season, who do you have your eye on? Oh man, I like Max Fielder from Rice. You know, I feel like I can relate to him. He's a tall baller, skinny dude. So I think he almost put up a triple-double this year. I'm hoping he turns the Rice program around as a sophomore. So I really like him, and I think if Rice starts winning some games, you could see his name go up the list. Now Rice is currently playing right now in the tournament, and as an honor code, none of us have checked the score. So when you see our brackets coming up, all of us have picked our teams before we know the score. So that's an honor code there. Justin, sleeper pick for next year. Who do you think?
Well, I'm going to steal Connor's pick and say Kenneth Lofton Jr. Or maybe a guy from Old Dominion like a Malik Curry. Both those guys, yeah. I think, can elevate their game to another level next season. Malik Curry is a guy that UNT is probably going to have to go against in the conference tournament. He's a guy that can create his own shot, get to the basket, shoot the ball from wherever. So maybe I would look at him next year, or a guy like Kenneth Lofton, who I think is going to really improve his game just because he's been around the conference for a year now. And usually guys take a big step from their freshman to their sophomore season, especially when Lofton had the kind of season that he did this year.
Listen, I like Kenneth Lofton Jr. a lot. I know I dogged on Connor a little bit for taking that pick just because he's a freshman, but I completely agree. You know, it's those guys you really want to look at. They're going to make big impacts, not just on their team, but reverberate across the conference coming up. He's definitely a guy we have to keep our eye on. So we're writing it down right now that Connor's calling it here as a freshman. So if Kenneth Lofton Jr. ends up being the man, Connor called it right here. But coming up next, it is bracket time, and we are going to get into our women's brackets right after the break. Welcome back into Mean Green Game Day. It is bracket time, and we could not be more excited. We are going to be getting into our men's and women's brackets for this USA tournament, but we are going to start out with the women's bracket. Jack, I want to toss it to you first. Talk to me about what you have in your women's bracket. Where do you have UNT landing?
Yeah, so I got UNT going into the third round. First off, I just want to say in the prelims, you know, I wish UAB and UTSA would have ended different. I know that game just ended, but UTSA 0-14 and they lost. I was hoping they sneak in, but I like UNT. I think in the third round I got UNT and UTEP. I got UNT versus Rice, and then I got UTEP versus Middle Tennessee. I think UTEP and UNT are both just streaky teams. And so I got Rice stomping UNT and stopping them from going on further in the bracket. I think Rice is just overall a better team, and the defense and Nancy Mulkey is just it's gonna come down to that. I don't think they're gonna contain her, and then it's gonna move on to Rice and Middle Tennessee, and then Middle Tennessee, Anastasia Hayes averages 26 points a game for Middle Tennessee. I think the offense is too much to overcome for Rice, so I got Middle Tennessee going to the big dance.
Awesome. So talk to me about why you think UNT is not going to move past Rice.
Yeah, so look, I know they beat them this past game, but I think the Thursday game, when Rice is really full force and really trying, and Nancy Mulkey is just dominating us and clogging the paint, grabbing all the rebounds, I think it makes us one-dimensional, and that's when Quincy Noble, the Q, and Nia Boyd, and Jazzion Jackson, Maddie Townley just get shut down, and their offense gets stagnant, and they have to just settle for 3 balls. So I think Rice is just going to shut us down defensively, and it's just going to be a heck of a battle with Middle Tennessee and Rice for the title.
But you did ultimately pick Middle Tennessee over Rice. What do you like about them?
I just like Middle Tennessee's offense. And Anastasia Hayes, there's 2 Hayes sisters on that team. I think 26 points per game says it enough. She can shoot the 3 ball. She can play defense. She's probably the best player in the conference from on the women's side. So I think overall their offense is just, you know, good defense but better offense. So you can always have good defense, but that better offense comes in, and it's too much to handle.
All right, well, Jack has Middle Tennessee going all the way. Connor, do you agree? Who do you have in your bracket?
Well, when it comes to women's basketball, you hardly ever see a true upset, like a big upset. It's very rare, especially in the tournament field, whether it's conference tournaments or the big dance. But I've got both the 1 seeds, Middle Tennessee and Rice, advancing to the Conference USA Tournament Championship. I do have Rice overall winning. I looked at the non-conference schedule between those two, and I thought Rice was a little bit more impressive. They almost beat A&M on the road, and A&M's women's team is one of the best teams in the country. So this is a dangerous Rice team. Despite being a mid-major team, they're still one of the best teams, in my opinion, in the state of Texas, and one of the best mid-major teams in the country. Otherwise, I think Southern Miss might pull off a slight upset in the second round over Florida Atlantic. Now I want to talk about UNT women's. That Rice win, again, we're not exactly sure what the mentality of the Owls were, but the fact of the matter, that's going to give UNT women's team some confidence. I do think they win their first game against Old Dominion, and I think they're going to pull off a slight upset against Charlotte, although watch out for Charlotte. They've been playing very well here lately. But I don't think UNT can beat Rice. I think Rice, again, is too good of a team. But again, with the women's bracket overall, I don't see too many major upsets.
So you have Rice going all the way. Do you think it's more to do with competition, or do you think that they are just in the right zone?
I think what we saw against UNT in their previous game was not what we're going to see. I think what we're going to see from Rice is what the winning streak that they were on a couple of weeks ago. I don't think there's really any Conference USA team, not even Middle Tennessee, who can stay with them.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I actually have Middle Tennessee going all the way, but before I have them going all the way, I actually have them meeting UNT in the championship round. I went with my gut on that Rice UNT in that next to last round, and I picked UNT over Rice. I know that Rice series was tough, but I think that it's a recency thing. UNT knows what to expect out of Rice. Rice really had something to play for in that first game, and they really came out strong. And it's neutral ground. That series was split, so we played on both people's home turf. That one was probably my toughest pick, that UNT over Rice. But in the end, ultimately, I just really believe in this team. I think what we've seen from this team, throughout the season, is their passion, heart, drive. You know, they're a not give up team. So I picked UNT to go to the championship round, but ultimately I did pick Middle Tennessee to win the whole thing. I really agree with Jack a lot on this one. It's about the Hayes sisters. That offense is just really, really strong. I think Middle Tennessee is just grooving at the right time, and ultimately I picked them going all the way. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah. I think the matchup in the final, I think it's going to be Rice, and I think it's going to be Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is a team that's going to score a bunch of points on you and beat you that way, whereas Rice is going to do the small things right. They're going to play efficient defense. They're going to get the rebounds, go after the rebounds, out hustle you. That's the type of style that Rice plays, and I think when they match up in the final, according to my bracket at least, Rice is going to win that matchup because they have somebody like Nancy Mulkey in the paint who's just able to protect the rim and grab all the rebounds.
Let's take a look at your bracket. How far do you have UNT going then?
I have them falling to Rice. I just don't think that we can beat this team for a second straight time. Connor said it a little bit with we don't know about their effort and their mentality a little bit in that last game. And watching that first game that we played against Rice when we knew that they needed the win and that they had the right mentality and they were going for the win, they exposed a lot of things on UNT. UNT had no rim penetration whatsoever. They could get nothing around the rim. And I think we're going to see that version of the Rice defense again in the conference tournament. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of a tired UNT team because now without the bye, you're going to be playing 2 straight days going into that third round. And whereas Rice is only going to have played the previous day. So I think losing the bye by not winning another game last weekend is going to hurt you a little bit.
Seems like none of us really believed in UTEP at all. What made you shy away from picking them?
The fact that Middle Tennessee is on their side.
Right.
And to me, with women's teams, usually the #1 teams advance. Again, you don't really see too many big upsets in the women's tournament, so I don't think you're really going to see any in this one either.
Yeah, and UTEP is just streaky like UNT. They can rattle off a win or they could lose. So I chose Middle Tennessee.
So we got two for Middle Tennessee, 2 for Rice. Devil's advocate, Justin, why would Middle Tennessee win?
No, I think Rice is going to win, and I would take Rice just because I think they can do the little things right over Middle Tennessee. The Middle Tennessee is more of an offensive team, whereas Rice is more defensive and focusing on that side of the ball. And the term in football is good defense beats good offense. So we'll see if that's how this plays out down the stretch.
Well, I think if you're going to use the factor of North Texas being tired from playing multiple games, I think you got to factor in Nancy Mulkey, who is limited because she's so tall and slow. Is she going to be able to be energized enough to play against Middle Tennessee? So I think that's an interesting matchup, and I want to see what happens.
I'm interested to see if that actually does end up being the matchup. So we'll just have to wait and see. So we went split on our women's brackets, but everybody picked a different winner for our men's brackets. So coming up next, we'll give you a preview. in Mean Green Game Day. Again, I am your host, Sarah, alongside Jack, Justin, and Connor. We want to thank you all so much for being with us today. It's been a really fun show. We've loved talking about this conference tournament. Before we let you go, everybody has been looking forward to this. We are going to break down our men's brackets. Jack, I want to start with you. How far do you have UNT going in this tournament?
I got UNT going to the third round. I got them playing La Tech. I think they get past Old Dominion. I know Malik Curry and Justin over there, they're in love with each other, but I really like UNT beating Old Dominion. I think they have first off, Middle Tennessee, then Old Dominion. I think they get on a little roll there. And then I just think La Tech, it's just a toss-up game. And that's how a lot of these games are going to go in the bracket. I think they're just toss-up games on neutral ground. It's just, a lot of these teams they split the series this year. So it's just going to be a little bit of luck, and it's going to be a little bit of just winning the game. So it's going to be a streaky, different kind of bracket this year. But I do think La Tech's going to beat UNT. Like they did this earlier this season. They split, but I know they split, but I like La Tech beating UNT.
Why La Tech beating UNT? That was a coin flip for me as well. Obviously we split that series earlier in the year. I couldn't really decide on that one. What really edged La Tech out for you? It's
just the offense for UNT, the consistency, and I don't think they're going to have enough gas. And I'm not saying they're going to be tired. I'm just saying the offense is just not enough this year for UNT, and it's just kind of underwhelming. And I had a bone to pick with Grant McCaslin for the way he time managed the last game against UAB. So, I don't have faith in time management, and I think the offense is really underwhelming, especially when you just have Hamlet and you try to let him create a shot. He just doesn't have it this year like he did last year. And Zach Simmons needs to step up too. But I think La Tech's just going to edge him out with defense. So
we'll just have to wait and see. But ultimately, you picked the Marshall Thundering Herd. Tell me why.
Picked a Herd. Like I said, it's going to be a crazy March. And I like the Herd. I like Mike D'Antoni, and his brother is Dan D'Antoni, and he coaches Marshall. And you know what Mike D'Antoni did with the Phoenix Suns, 7 seconds or less offense, and he did with the Rockets, a three-point shooting team. It's like both those combined into Marshall for Dan D'Antoni. I think, Marshall's number one in pace. They have the number one leading assist getter in Jared West, and they have Tavion Kinsey, who can shoot lights out. He's the Bradley Beal of the CUSA. So I think this offense is insane. I think they could upset anybody in this bracket. So I think they're gonna catch fire, and then they're gonna upset some big names like Western Kentucky, and they're gonna get in. They're gonna beat La Tech in the final. So I have Marshall.
Now, they are a fast-paced team, but my big question with Marshall coming into this tournament is if they can keep up that fast pace over the course of a tournament, because the tournament's different than the regular season because you're playing back-to-back games depending on as far as you advance. So can they keep up that fast pace throughout this whole tournament? And if they can, I like that pick.
I agree with you. They have to keep it up with consistency, but once you're hot and you play back-to-back every day, it's going to be hard for you to get out of groove. So
I like Marshall too. I actually didn't have Marshall in Western Kentucky in the spot that you had them, and so I was interested that you had them edging out Western Kentucky. That one would have been a tough one for me. But let's move on to Connor. Connor, talk to me about your bracket.
Well, I know a few of you might find this questionable, but I have UNT wing it all because, well, they're UNT. They got 4 senior starters. They got to do something sooner or later. I think it has to be this year, right? With me, when it comes to these conference tournaments, to me, I always look at, okay, well, obviously, who is playing the best? That's not UNT. But I figure that they're going to turn it on. And, maybe I'm a little bit biased towards UNT, just slightly, but I'll admit that. But I think with their experience, they're going to do just enough on offense to figure out a way to win the tournament. Now, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Louisiana Tech is a team you got to watch for. This is a young team that's clicking at the right time. But ultimately, I feel like Louisiana Tech, we match up better against Louisiana Tech than we do UAB or even possibly Marshall or Western Kentucky. And fortunately, we're not going to have to play one of those teams unless we get all the way to the championship game. Now, I don't think that UAB is going to do as well as what we've seen so far during the regular season. I think Marshall, I like Jack's pick with Marshall doing good in the tournament. I think Marshall will upset UAB, but I don't think they're going to get past Western Kentucky. Now, here's what kind of finalized it for me. At the end of last season, with the way it ended, I just figured that UNT and Western Kentucky were going to find a way to finish first and second or to find a way to face each other when everything was on the line. And with the way the bracket was set up, we have a chance to play them in the championship game. And I feel like that's going to happen. And I feel like UNT is going to find a way to win and get into the big dance.
Are you worried at all, Connor, that UNT is playing their worst basketball, though, at the end of the season and when it matters most?
I think worst is strong. Do you think, Connor?
Well, on offense at least. Let me say that much, on offense.
Well, this has really never been a team to really focus much on the offensive end. This has been a team that kind of surrounds himself on defense and team play. Although the team play has been very questionable as of late, it seems like it's been Javen Hamlet and just let him go and everyone else stand around, maybe shoot an open shot here or there. But to me, UNT is consistently inconsistent in a way to where they can easily bounce back. Because it's not like they have to rely on the three-point shooting, which can be off or on. UNT is a consistent team in terms of their offense, and we know they're going to come play. We know they're going to be playing great defense. And the way the bracket's set up for them is just perfect. To me, Louisiana, Old Dominion, you have to get by them, and Malik Curry. But to me, there's really no team in our region, if you will, that really just scares me.
So does it not scare you what happened last week against UAB, like what you saw from UNT? Does that not make you nervous at all?
Well, it makes me nervous if we faced UAB again, but I don't think we will because I think Marshall's going to beat them. And then I think Western Kentucky will beat Marshall. I am worried about Western Kentucky, but we have to get to the championship game first. And I like the way we match up against Old Dominion, and I like the way we match up against Louisiana Tech.
And I think losing UAB like we did, it did shatter my confidence in UNT. But also, it's not like the first game they basically shut us down, but we almost came back the second game. We almost broke through that. Whatever the heck defense they were running, the zone, the man, the full court press. And so I don't think it's the worst stretch of offensive basketball we played because we play those non-con teams and it was ripped my eyes out watching UNT play basketball. But I think UNT, I like the pick, Connor. It's just the fact that UNT reminds me of a certain football team that I like. And when the big moment comes on, UNT seems to crumble. And I don't think that if they get to that point and it's a big game, I think they're going to crumble.
I think last weekend was a wake-up call for this Mean Green team, and I think that's one of the positives coming out of the losses. And a positive of not having a bye in the tournament is that you get an inferior opponent in the first round. They'll take on Middle Tennessee. So that's a game, kind of what I talked about with Southern Miss earlier in the season, where you can get back to your identity in offense. You can run your slow sets. You can try out different things on defense. So then when you get to harder teams like Old Dominion and La Tech in the next rounds, you're prepared for that. So maybe in the first round they start building some momentum, and that's what they need to do if they're going to catch fire in this tournament.
And just a reminder, Middle Tennessee is going to be facing UNT tomorrow. That game that was supposed to be this evening against FIU actually did get canceled because of COVID protocols. So Middle Tennessee automatically advanced, so we will see them tomorrow. All right, guys. Connor, I'm going to have to go almost exactly what you were thinking. I actually have UNT making it to the championship round like you, but I have them getting edged up by UAB, and I have UAB sneaking past Marshall and sneaking past Western Kentucky in those earlier rounds. What I saw from them over the last weekend, I knew that they were a team to watch. I talked about it over the weekend. They were my biggest competition for UNT in the conference. What I saw from them over the weekend only confirmed that. The way that they play, it's like watching music. They're completely in sync with each other. Their defense is outstanding, and I just don't know. I don't see them getting off of that rhythm here, especially with them having the momentum going into the tournament. I really do like UNT. Again, I agree with every single one of you guys that Old Dominion and La Tech are going to be hard outs, hard to get past. But again, Middle Tennessee is a little bit of an easier team that we are facing because we didn't end up getting that bye week. But I do see them making it to the championship round. But ultimately, I don't think that they would be able to sneak past UAB again. Now, I do have to admit, it was a little scary picking a team to beat another team for a third time. At football, that is a fatal flaw to make. You never pick a team to beat someone 3 times. Just ask the Saints getting beat by Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But ultimately, UAB just looked too impressive to me. But Jack, tell me why I'm wrong.
About your pick about
Yes.
UAB?
Tell me why I'm wrong about UAB.
Man, I don't know if I can talk about UAB without being made fun of because I basically said they're a trash team and they're not a contender. So, I mean, what I watched on Saturday was a contending basketball team. So, I mean, I agree with you, and I think that game's either way.
I mean, thanks for agreeing with me. Listen, it's always nice when you can, put your opinions out there and change some people's minds. So glad we changed your mind over the weekend, Jack. Justin, let's talk about your bracket. How far do you have UNT going?
I have UNT losing in the second round against Old Dominion. And the reason for that is Old Dominion reminds me in a lot of ways of UAB. They're guard heavy. Their guards are going to score the majority of their points. But the difference between UAB and Old Dominion is that Old Dominion has a guy like Malik Curry. And I don't think that our guards are physical enough on the defensive end to go against a guy like that. Old Dominion is a proven team. Last time there was a conference championship tournament, they won it. And so this is going to be a rematch of the last two conference champions. The game against them earlier in the season was postponed, so that's just adding more fuel to this fire and more interest around this game. But I just think that the last three games that UNT played were not impressive enough to me on the offensive end to pick them over a team like Old Dominion, who's been really consistent all season long, competing with good teams. They were able to split with Western Kentucky the last weekend. So just a very impressive team overall that I worry about with UNT.
You've definitely been riding with Western Kentucky all season. You know, I think you were the most disappointed that series got canceled. So I think it's a good pick. I think that they offensively they're dominant. I'm really excited to see how far they make it. I'm excited to watch them play. I was looking forward to watching them play against UNT, and obviously we were robbed of that opportunity. So I'm looking forward to watching them play. I'm looking forward to watching all these teams play. So we have Western Kentucky, UAB, Marshall, and UNT. Which one of us is going to be right, or will none of us be right? We'll just have to watch the conference tournament and find out. Thank you so much for joining us today on Mean Green Game Day. If you want to learn more, follow us on Twitter at NTTV_sports and join us next time.